Okay.
Hello, everybody. Today is March 27th, 2024, and this is the Standing Committee on Finance and Facilities. And we are meeting in a hybrid and remote model using a meeting application and being broadcast by BevCam. Thank you, BevCam. On June 16th, 2021, the former governor signed Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021. And then on February 12th and again on July 16th of 2022, he extended the provisions to, among other things, allow public bodies to continue to hold meetings remotely until March 31st. Oh, we're very close. 2023. Oh, we're a whole year off. Now, our current governor and legislature has extended further by 2 years until March 31st of 2025. So we have a whole year to go. These acts, they specifically suspend the need for a quorum and the chair to be physically present and asks our body to use technical methods to allow safe public access to our meetings. As a note, Beverly has prior approval for remote participation. Although through that permission, the chair and a quorum must be physically present. And so we'll be able to do that when this particular act and its extensions expire. Tonight is F&F, which means we do not have a spot on the agenda for members of the public to address the body. The next public comment will be at our next regular school committee meeting on April 10th. You can send in your thoughts and request a remote link before the start of the meeting. The email address to have your thoughts read on air is residentvoice@beverlyschools.org, or you can come in person and a sign-up sheet will be at a table that's usually right over here. You will need to state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak. Okay, joining us today are members of the school committee and various members of the district administration and leadership teams. And I see a lot of people over there whose names I maybe am not going to remember. And I'll try to conduct a full roll call for attendance, especially for the members of this committee. Who will be voting, and all our votes this evening will be by roll call because we do have a voting member dialed in. Dr. Silva is remote. So please remember that any audio and video that you supply on this platform will become part of the meeting record, and as such, I ask you to please remember to use your mute functionality to prevent background noises. Okay. On our committee, on the school committee, we have in person Miss Kimberly Coelho.
Here.
Easy for me to say, I apologize for that. On our remote platform, we have a member of FNF, Dr. Jeffrey Silva.
Here.
Fantastic. Thank you, Dr. Silva. In the room, we have our City Council, one of our 2 City Council reps. Thank you for attending this evening. Councilor Todd Rotundo from Ward 1.
Here, and thank you for having me.
We have citizen resident rep, doctor, you don't go by doctor, sorry, Mr. Manzo. I'm gonna have a heck of a time this evening. We also have citizen rep Patricia Sparks.
Spanks. Here.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, fantastic. So those are our voting members this evening. From the administration, we have the wonderful bean counter, Jean Sherburne.
Thank you, I'm here.
Well, I'm sad about that. In the back row, we have some members of B&G. Bob Shiroli, yeah? Do we have a microphone
Here.
back there?
Thank you.
Fantastic. Megan from Ayers. Principal Megan Hart from Ayers. Just so you know, I don't know my children's names either. Assistant Superintendent, just ask them to tell you. Assistant Superintendent Dot Flaherty. Fantastic. Head of like everything else in the school district, Aaron Brown. And someone who will be introduced. So we're going to hold that introduction. And we have some members of the public as well, including wonderful Julia Brotherton. Fantastic. Okay, so here we go. We have a pretty full agenda. The agenda is on the screen. I'll try to make it a little bigger so people in the audience can actually see it from the back.
We also have John Coffey from the Buildings and Grounds.
Yeah, I just said B and G,
John Coffey. Coffey.
like the caffeine. Okay, thank you for helping me because that name was definitely not. Look I got a lot of other names almost correct this evening. Okay, so first item on the agenda is approval of our meeting minutes from our last meeting. And for everybody on the committee, those were in your packet. I'm looking for a motion to approve those meeting minutes.
So moved.
Motion.
All right, Kim, will you change your motion to a second?
Second.
Fantastic. Thank you, Dr. Silva. Thank you, Ms. Coelho. Are there any questions or corrections on those meeting minutes? Oh, I could put them on the screen, sorry. Here's our meeting minutes. Questions, corrections? Seeing none, I'll call the roll. Can I have your sheet of paper and then we can share? Well, how about you're left-handed? Yeah. That's going to be problematic. Okay, we'll start with Ms. Coelho.
Yes.
Ms. Spanks. Yes. Mr. Manzo.
Yes.
Dr. Silva.
Yes.
Thank you. And myself, yes. Okay. Next item on our agenda is gifts to schools. And again, I'm going to put that on my screen. I'm going to try to zoom up. We have $250 from Harbor Suites for Beverly High School, $63.39 from a picture company for district-wide use, for a total of $313.39. A motion to accept with gratitude those donations, those gifts to schools.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Coelho. Thank you, Mr. Manzo. Any questions on our gifts to schools? Here comes the roll. Ms. Coelho.
Yes.
Ms. Spanks.
Yes.
Mr. Manzo.
Yes.
Dr. Silva.
Yes.
Myself, yes. Fantastic. That passes with flying colors. I'm getting those things off our screens. Next on our agenda, our acceptance of grants. I don't have that open on my screen. There are some. Okay, hold on a minute. Hold, please. We're having technical difficulties finding the grants. Have a budget transfer. Oh, it's the Word file. Oh, thank you, Mr. Manzo. Grants to be approved. Here comes my Zoom again. Fantastic. Thank you for that help, Mr. Manzo. Okay. Now showing on my screen, I'll try and make it a little bigger for you people sitting in the back. Okay, so we have, Ms. Sherburne, would you like these grants to be voted en masse, or do you want us to take them one at a time?
I would say we can do it all at one time. I will explain that the first one is grant number 424, which is middle school partnership grant for $45,000. That's a new grant. And then we have entitlement grants that received increases. So you've already voted on the original entitlement amounts. So you're looking to increase, the increase amounts is what the committee is voting on. Title I grant number 305 for $357 additional dollars. Grant 140, which is Title II Part A, for an additional $1,495. Grant number 262, the Early Childhood Special Education Grant, an additional $227. And grant number 240, the IDEA Special Education Grant for $7,471, for a total of $54,550.
All right. In order to have any questions or discussion, I'm looking for a motion to receive this grant amount of $54,550.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Coelho. Thank you, Mr. Manzo. Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Sherburne? Yes, Mr. Manzo.
Just really briefly, what's the middle school partnership grant going to be used for?
I knew you were going to ask me that question. I'm going to turn to... We're going to go to Dot Flaherty.
Ms. Flaherty, Dr. Flaherty, if you're going to talk, will you please use a microphone? Thank you.
I don't have all of the pieces right in front of me, but I know in the past what it has helped with is the leadership program through guidance and doing some of the Navient stuff that helps students with thinking about college and career.
Thank you.
And
Thank you, Dot.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Flaherty. Dr. Silva, I think I'm going to try to keep my eye up to see if you raise your hand in Zoom land. But please, if you have something to say and I haven't noticed your hand, maybe verbally unmute yourself and ask if you can speak, okay?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, are there any further questions for Ms. Sherburne or the school administration? And I should note that Dr. Chirocek has joined us, so our superintendent of schools is here as well, if you have any questions for her on these grants. Okay, seeing none, here comes the roll. Ms. Coelho?
Yes.
Ms. Spanks?
Yes.
Mr. Manzo?
Yes.
Dr. Silva?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Thank you. Okay, awesome, awesome, awesome. Next item on the agenda, buildings and grounds update. And we actually have our B&G guys here today, which is what a pleasant surprise.
Yeah.
Okay,
Excuse me, Linda, you missed my transfer.
I missed your transfer. Look, it's my next tab. Okay, so let's go to transfers for 500, please, Alex. Okay, so we have on our agenda this evening transfer number 1284, journal entry number 1284, and it too should have been in your packet. Ms. Sherburne, would you like to speak to that?
Sure, this transfer is mainly approving the increases in the substitute lines, OT 275 61000 and OT 275 61872 that I mentioned at the last meeting that they were getting low and that we'd be looking for funds to cover them. And then we do have a minor, we had some gas account that went into the negative, so I corrected that from the North Beverly account to from the high school account. And the funding for the substitutes is coming from accounts that have some maternity leaves that are maybe for the year or part of the year. So funding is available to cover for the long-term subs to cover that. So I'm looking for this approval.
Okay, I'm looking for a motion to approve this budget transfer.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Manzo. Thank you, Ms. Coelho. Anybody have any additional questions? Ms. Sherburne kind of staved them off with her comment about where is the money coming for these long-term subs and or why do we need long-term subs? Because we have some teachers out on maternity leave. Any other further questions? Mr. Silva, I'm looking to see if your hand is up.
No questions.
Fantastic. I'm going to call the roll. Ms. Coelho,
Yes.
Ms. Spanks,
Yes.
Mr. Manzo,
Yes.
Dr. Silva,
Yes.
myself, yes. All right, Ms. Sherburne. Now can we go to the B&G report?
Yes, you may.
I apologize for that. Okay, next item on our agenda, we're here, B&G report. The report was in your packet. I'll throw it on the screen for half a second. Not a lot written here, but we do have, it's a pleasant surprise to have our B&G guys in the room with us. If anybody has any questions, usually we just kind of blow through this report and say if you have questions, we handle them offline because we're pretty cramped for time, and we do have some extra cool stuff being discussed this evening, which is really probably why they're here, right?
Yes.
Okay,
yes,
we're
they're
going to
here for
pretend
the
we're going to pretend they're here for the B&G report though right now. And anybody have any questions for our B&G gurus? All right, seeing none.
But can I just point out, because we talked about this at the last meeting, of importance, I think, for everyone to notice is that the whiteboards and shades at the middle school from the flood that took place have been replaced, and I think that's I love when we're hitting the milestones for all of that work that's being done from that flood damage. So just wanted to share with all of you that one was on there, and all that's left is the millwork. So. Just want to
All
make sure.
that's left is the millwork. Wow, that's kind of
Not
cool
just
because
It's a lot, but it's still all that's left.
right. But when we saw that, when we first toured this building after that unfortunate event, it was pretty staggering. So congratulations.
Yeah.
All right, next on our agenda is our Director of Finance and Operations update.
Yes.
Would you like to start? Would you like Vanna to start in your file here, or would you like me to start with something else?
You can just start right there, and we're gonna say, hello, spring has come. I was trying to bring the Florida weather, but I did bring the Florida
Outfit.
outfit, but the weather is coming.
I hope you're right.
We're going to be talking about an air quality report, ESSA reporting. We do have some discussion on procurement policy. We do have the principal from AIRS here to talk about the playground naming. And I do have an athletic coaching update as far as a position they would like to swap for another, and my financial reports. So the first thing I'd like to talk about is the air quality reports, and turn the microphone over to the superintendent,
Righty.
who has all this information.
And we'll see how long I last. So I was presenting earlier today at Cove, and my voice quit about a third of the way through. So I'm hoping for a voice for this evening. But thank you. We wanted to take a minute to come forward. I think that most of you are aware that we, or maybe you weren't, that we have been working together with the union to address some concerns that were brought forth by teachers at Centerville, raise some questions regarding air quality. Julia and I began meeting early in the fall, this fall, and she brought forward that there were concerns and that the MTA was hoping to fund some testing on site to provide further information in regards to conditions to the staff. We agreed to conduct some simultaneous testing and identify any potential areas of concern. At that time, Bob and I consulted with Mike Collins, and we enlisted Test-All Environmental Services to work for the district, and the union had a group called Work Environmental Assessment LLC that conducted the assessment for the MTA. And then together we worked to schedule some dates and times. The plan was that each one of our groups would be represented in there and take the air quality samples in the same areas that were of concern, so that we would have sort of matching data to kind of make sure that we were getting a full picture of what was going on. Next slide. So the dates that we chose, we went on November 16th. We did initial air quality samples at the Centerville School. Both teams went in and did that. On December, then I believe some more concerns. I think perhaps Julia came forward and we added Hannah to the schedule. We went in Hannah on December 4th and collected air quality samples at Hannah. There were a couple of classrooms there. The Hannah staff also. The work kind of got expanded a little, and they did some surface samples, which is a little different than air quality. And then we went back into Centerville on February 19th and conducted similar surface samples and other kind of testing that they had requested. The goal always is to make sure that we have clean, safe, environmentally, safe schools for our students and for our staff. And then the results of the testing were provided in some comprehensive reports. I did send them along. They're rather lengthy. I'm not sure if everyone had a chance to read through them all. I did ask Dr. Silva, who is sort of kind of expertise in some of this stuff, to make sure that he had read through it and answer any questions or ask any questions as we go along as well. And then I forgot, Paul, you probably would have understood them too, so I didn't mean to jump over you. Sorry, all our chemists in the room. So we had the tests, as I said, the tests were conducted by two different groups. All in all, the results and the conclusions came up, and I sort of sorted these by which report it came from, and then what happened was Julie and I worked together, interpreting the results along with Mike Collins and Bob, and I think she got some advice on her side as well, in terms of what would be the right next steps, if anything, that we might need to ameliorate. So the results from the Test-All, this is at Hannah, the first one I'm talking about, basically one of the things that's important is there's no federal regulations for the collection or the interpretation or any of these things. So one of the reasons I think we felt it was important to have both groups kind of get their own person and have a sense of comfort, at least in what the reports were telling us. And what we found, what the Test-All group reported, was that the airborne particulate, did I say that right? Particulate levels were well within acceptable levels, and that at Hannah there was no further response needed at this time. Similarly, On the next slide, I called it the IAQ report. That's the Work Environmental Group report. They also said there were no remarkable mold growth findings when analyzing the spore trap report at Hannah. That doesn't mean that there were a couple of items, I think, at Hannah that we talked about, some painting and but that work that could be done over vacation time or in the summer to kind of make some improvements at the Hannah school. So we move on to the Centerville report. Again, the next slide, the test-all report for Centerville, again, found that airborne particulate levels were well within acceptable levels. We did have one room that was suggested that we go back and do some more retesting, and that was that surface testing that we agreed to do at Hannah. And I think if you go to the next slide, the IAQ, Work Environmental Report, also pointed out a few rooms that we wanted to look more closely at. We did surface sampling on those rooms. Again, the normal trappings indicated that the spores that were found would be those that would have the same general distribution, either outdoors or whatever. And that's my very technical interpretation of all of that. I would defer if there's any particulars that Paul or Jeff want to bring forward, or if you have any questions. I'll go through and let you know what we concluded together and what recommendations we made and what things the district has done in response to the reports that we got. The recommendations really were around sanitization. So in particular, taking a look at those rooms at Centerville and doing a cleaning, a cleaning similar to the cleaning we usually do in the summer, but just repeating it again now. I want to point out that in both reports, there were mention of sometimes the shrubbery that was outside a window might have contributed to a higher exposure to the possibility of molds, spores being there. And also in a couple of the rooms, so again, I'm not looking to limit the work that gets done, say, in the science room, but there was peat moss and there was a hydroponics, equipment that was running. And there were items that we embrace that we don't want to say you can't have, but that would contribute maybe at some level to some of that. So that being said, the two recommendations were around cleaning. We worked together with the union. We identified the rooms that we wanted to go back in and clean. We also, we also identified the area, some shrubs which were cut back during, I think some were done in February. Yeah. And then the remainder will be done in the summer. And so these were the follow-up actions that we took. On March 23rd, the district staff conducted additional cleaning in the classrooms and areas that were identified in the report. Our vendor test all environmental, so one of the points were do the cleaning, but then come back and retest and make sure that it was sufficient or that it had an impact. And so our vendor is scheduled to return tentatively right now on March 29th, but they're not going to come if it's pouring on March 29th because rain would significantly impact the results. So I think they're going to wait for a warmer, weathery day. I don't know what the 29th will look like. And then finally, upcoming over the summer break, we're going to continue to work on removing the additional bushes in addition to the ones that were already removed. So that is the report that I have. I wanted to bring, I know we talked earlier that we were doing the testing. I just wanted now that it was complete and the reports were available. I also, I believe Julie shared the same reports with the teachers. So the teachers also have had access to these reports and she has met with them and at least shared what we said were the findings of the report.
Okay, fantastic. Go ahead, Dr. Silva.
If it's okay, I'll just make a quick comment about this. I was able to get through the test all report. I found it very easy to get through. They did a really good job summarizing the results. And with regard to the air quality, it was very clear from the numbers that were presented that the count of indoor spores was well below the value of 1, which basically says that there are less spores present indoors than there are outside. So it was very clear to understand, and they the numbers were very easy to calculate yourself and determine based on the data that was collected.
Fantastic. All right, so I'm looking around the room to see if anybody in the room has any additional questions on the air quality reports before we, yes, Mr. Manzo.
So there's going to be additional testing after the cleaning?
Follow-up, so yeah, so,
Is that by both groups?
no, it's just going to be test all,
Okay, and that's okay with
and that was okay
the
with Julie, yeah.
teachers? Okay.
Yeah.
I'll pile on to that question. Where is the follow-up testing? Only at Centerville where the deep cleaning happened?
Where there was indication that it was, so again, while the levels weren't significantly raised, they were, we agreed that if there were concerns, we would go in, we would do that cleaning, and then we had one room on our test hall that indicated we should do that, and there were a few more that the Working Environmental Associate Assessment Group chose to, and we said, we'll do all the rooms that had any measure of anything, and we did it, and we're going to follow up testing in each of those rooms.
And so there were no such rooms at any of the other schools?
No.
Okay, I'm sorry, that was really kind of my question. Fantastic. Okay, so if there are no further questions, I'm looking around the room one last time. We'll go to the next item in Ms. Sherburne's F&F report.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Next item I have is talking about ESSA 3 reporting. So as you know, the ESSA 3 reporting is grant number 119, and it was for $4,741,978. This funding is from FY22 through the fall of FY24, and then this funding is no longer available. We are going to be doing a little adjustments in this grant to cover some additional costs in here, but what we wanted to report here is the administrative salaries that we anticipated of $154,452. We've already spent $102,033 in FY23, and we'll be spending $52,419 in FY24. The instructional salaries is going to be $999,074, which $763,976 is this year. And as you know, when we're talking about our budget processes, that we have positions that are ESSER funded, and those positions will either have to be put into the appropriation or be ending, and that you'll hear a lot about during our budget process. The support staff salaries is for the whole grant is $230,420. This year, it's $132,640. That's covering paraprofessionals and any tech support that we needed. Also in there is hall monitors. The stipends is $215,000, and of that, it's mostly this year is for FY24 is $154,740. So during this process, Dr. Shorachek, myself, meet with Dr. Flaherty to talk about the grant and what the expenditures are, and that, sometimes we plan for one thing and it isn't, we're going to change our mind a little bit, and if we're changing from one line to another, we have to go to the Department of Ed for approval.
Not just like a budget transfer like you get
Right,
with
it's just
us.
not, it's not as simple here. We do have to go to them, and then we do have to ask more specifics. So the fringe benefits is $297,321, and this year, FY24 is $132,420. Contractual services, $522,540, and for FY24, it's $435,683. I've already reported to you what happened in FY23, so I'm just kind of skimming over
Skipping
that.
over that, fine.
The supplies is $962,023, and as you can see, most of it is this year. And the bulk of it is the ELA science. We added foreign language, we added health and pre-K curriculum materials in here. So what we want to do is try to use the ESSER funding for those items so we don't have to pay for them in next year's or the following year's budget. So again, a lot of planning and a lot of discussion amongst all in the administration. And the other cost is $1,361,148, and this year will be $971,372. And one of the items we have in there is the BHS field lighting. So we're trying to get lighting done out in the field. So that is one item that we are going to be putting on our amendment request, with fingers crossed that the Department of Ed agrees with us on that, and if they don't, then we'll have to shift our thought so that we can
I might need
do it
you, Ms.
someplace
Coelho, to
else.
finish the meeting because I'm going to be on the floor.
So our fingers are crossed, but that's what I have for, for a report. We will be doing an extensive report at the end of it on what the whole grant was spent on. Dr. Shrochek has asked me to come back after retirement to come and give a whole
The R
big
word.
ESSA report.
Or you
haven't
just
used- I
don't have to
haven't
retire
used-
at all and you can stay.
Yeah, I haven't used that word yet, so we'll just move right along.
Okay, and I don't know if Dr. Shrochek has anything else she wants to say about
No,
ESSA. but
mostly I
that's-
was just going to say that, we, for the last 3 years, have had a lot of time and investment on the part of Jean and a lot of the work, and she is extremely knowledgeable about what we've done and where we've done it. And so I did, I hope, convince her to come back and make sure, because there is a rather extensive end-of-year report, and it would be rather challenging for someone who didn't run the grant for the 3 years to then try to figure out what we did. So Jean will be working on her contract for that. I don't know how we'll do that. But we will be bringing Jean back for help on that one.
Okay. Next slide.
The next slide is talking about the procurement policy number DJE, and we were
I
hoping
will-
to bring it forward, but there's been some changes and some input from the city procurement and solicitor's office, and I received it late this afternoon, I'll call it this evening. So I did ask if we could just table this for next month when we can actually dig deep into it.
Right, so for the members of this committee, we've seen this policy already, and we voted to send it on to the Committee of the Whole. It passed its first reading, which most policies do, and at the second reading, the mayor kind of put the brakes on and asked that the city procurement officer and the assistant city solicitor take a look at the policy. And they, the combination of those city officials had significant concerns with the policy as it was written. It's a kind of generic policy from MASC. And so they sent back a policy that is, I like to think, perhaps readable to people with a law degree and not very useful to people without a law degree. I'm without. And so I sent it back, actually, we're in a little bit of a time delay because I didn't send it back to the mayor until this past weekend. And I basically said, I appreciate the city solicitor's input. However, I need you, Mr. Mayor, who is a lawyer, he has passed the bar, to either do a translation or get somebody on the city side to do a translation, because we need a policy in our policy manual that the average person can read. You shouldn't have to have a law degree to read it, and all the MGL and charter references then kind of go in the bottom. That's how our policies are formatted. So now we're in this little tag you're it back and forth. And so I suspect that in a month from now at our next FNF meeting, we'll maybe have a policy that both quote unquote sides agree upon to present again to this committee. And assuming we pass it out, then it'll go to the Committee of the Whole.
I agree.
And I would say too, there's another little twist in here. So Ms. Sherburne started this job approximately 11 years ago, and the mayor is one of 2 longest serving school committee members, and he and I both got sworn in for the first term 10 years ago. And so I would assert to you that this is the first time we've really had to think about this policy, because in our charter, he bequeaths, first to some term I think is accurate, purchasing power to a named individual. Per our charter, it says you must name an individual, not a position. And so, this policy has always said Jean Sherburne in it. And now we're coming to a point where we're going to need to update our policy to put a different name in there. And I would assert to you that I would really like a position in there, which means, I'm looking at you, Councilor Rotundo, really means a charter change. And we just had our charter review, but there are things we can change in the charter as a city without doing the whole review process. So that came in my brain sometime this weekend. And so maybe I'm going to try to push something up the chain on the city council side to say, can we please look at this particular part of the charter where the mayor designates that somebody in the school system is allowed to do purchasing, is allowed to sign for purchasing, and could that be, in fact, a title instead of a named individual? So you and I will have to, oh darn, have lunch together, maybe, to talk about how do we make that happen on the city side. Excellent, fantastic. What? Toasted raviolis. Toasted raviolis. I love it. Okay.
The next item we have on here is the Ayers Playground naming. And we have the principal, Megan Hart, here. So in accordance with the school committee policy on naming of facilities, we are bringing forward the finance of facilities, a request for the recommendation of the school committee, to the school committee, to consider naming the Ayers Elementary School playground in honor of Robert Bob King, the beloved school custodian who passed away in October of 2023. So I'll give the floor over to Megan if there's any questions. But this is, in our policy, we do have to get a vote for this.
And Ms. Hart, before I forward any questions to you, looking at our administration, F and F would have to vote this out, and then the committee of the whole also.
Right, so I thought it was, you would make a recommendation.
Fantastic. Okay, just checking what it is that you're asking us to do this evening. Ms. Hart, would you like to say anything, or do you want to just field questions?
I think that I would be happy to field questions.
Okay, fantastic. All right, so committee members, and Dr. Silva, I'm looking to see if you put your hand up or if I see the little green light around your name on Zoom. Do we have any questions or concerns? There is a policy that says the school committee has to vote when we want to name something within our schools. And there is a waiting period as well. Mr. Rotundo, I'll come to you in just a second. And so... okay, that's all I wish to say about that. There is a policy, and we have to wait a certain period of time so that other people who might want it named after someone else have a chance to submit their requests. So this is a request that's on the table, and I would take a motion to approve this so that then we can open the floor for discussion. I'll make that motion.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Coelho. Thank you, Mr. Manzo. I'm looking around the table. You look like you want to ask a question.
No, I just, for the people who don't know, Bob, could you just say a few words about why this is so important to the Ayers community?
Sure. I said that I would field questions only because I fear I would get emotional. But I just want to say that, first of all, I'm very grateful that this is coming forward. It was a very sudden and unexpected loss to our school community. As I'm sure people have heard, and those of you who knew Bob personally, he was such a large part of our building. He was so much more than our custodian. He was a friend to staff members. He was a mentor to students. He really engaged with all of us in every aspect of our school day. And so it was a huge loss for us. I guess I would also like to say that at his passing, his family requested, in lieu of flowers, that donations be made toward this playground. And so in their time of need, they were they knew how much Ayers School meant to him. And that was their request. And so I just wanted to put that out there too, because I think that's significant.
Thank you.
That's fantastic. All right, I'm looking around the room. Does anyone else have any questions for Principal Hart? Oh, yes, Mr. Rotundo. Councilor Rotundo.
I just want to make a comment more so. I knew Mr. King, Bob King, from the day he was hired. Dr. Trocheck actually was the principal then. And I hope you really do take this in consideration. He was a big part, even after when I left the school with my involvement with there, even up to the day of his death, we were working on something the day before. So I hope you really do consider this. I know it's something that you take to heart and make, because it is an important piece where you're naming something to a person. But he was, and as Ms. Hart said, is a big part of the school. You know, even still when I go up there occasionally, you know, he still, you know, to me, his big thing was, "You betcha." You know, that was his saying. So I hope you really, you know, push this through and name it in his honor. I think it really is fitting, because he did. I mean, some of the things, the crazy things he would do in the school there. And even when when we do things on the playgrounds, he was there helping to build, when the PTO was putting things together there, the smaller playground at the kindergarten area. So it really is a fitting tribute to the man who was a great piece up there. Thank you.
I appreciate that input. And so for people who don't know, Councilor Rotundo for many years was the PTO president at the Ayers School. And so that's the perspective from which that additional feedback comes. All right, I'm looking around the room one last time. All right, there is a motion on the table. Roll call vote. Ms. Coelho,
Yes.
Ms. Spanks,
Yes.
Mr. Manzo,
Yes.
Dr. Silva,
Yes.
myself, absolutely. And again, the process is that this will go to the committee of the whole, and then I trust that committee president Abel will manage the wait time and figure out our next steps. But you're over the first hurdle.
The next item I have here is athletic coaches. So as you know, at the last meeting, we talked about how many coaches we have at the, in the athletics for each season. And the athletic department is not filling the ultimate Frisbee coaching position in the spring season due to enrollment, lack of enrollment to have the sport run. And they're asking to swap the position for an additional middle school track coach for the spring season, because that enrollment is increased substantially. So I'm not looking for a vote. I'm really looking to give information that the superintendent and myself discussed this, that they can. There is no additional cost associated with this. With that said, next year, there still is an ultimate Frisbee coaching stipend listed under our sports, and if they need to continue to, if they're going to have that and continue to need this fourth middle school track coach, they would have to come to the committee. So for FY '24, it's just a swap, but for the future, have to come here for an additional.
For an
So-
additional FTE.
Yeah, and that's why I did that last month, to make sure that everybody knows how many coaches in each season, and then therefore, and since this is starting right now, I wanted to bring it forth tonight as a swap, so that we know that when we do hire somebody, we had it already approved by the administration.
That would be a lovely ordering there.
Yes.
I am, there's a little snark there, I apologize.
That's okay.
Looking around the room, if anybody has any questions about that before we move to the next item, and Jean's update. Okay, I'm scrolling.
Okay, the next thing I have is the school revenues. So school revenue report is up on the screen. There is really nothing that is alarming to me. I am going to be bringing forth next month a little recap on the school choice, because the school choice funding coming in, oh, I'm sorry. It's my grandchild. Sorry. I hate saying decline. Whoops. Therefore, the school choice, we are getting increased money. And what I was looking at is, I was looking at briefly today, and that it's not that we have substantial additional students coming in, but what I did find is we're receiving extra money because of the special, oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, she keeps trying. that we getting a special education component that comes in, additional funding. So one of them I noticed, and I was kind of pleasantly surprised, it was $16,000. So a lot of times when people ask, what do you get for school choice? We can't just take the full amount and then divide it by the number. It's based on, there's extra funds that come in if there's special education components added to them. So I will be bringing that forth next month to talk about what our increase is, because the numbers will shift next month. As far as the circuit breaker revenue that is coming in as we expected, the special education tuition, that again is for students that we receive into our programs that Ms. Splansky has put out there for other communities to send their children to us. The non-resident tuition service funding, that funding, what happens is that funding comes in the previous fiscal year, so it's always right from the beginning. We're saying that we have, 88, we got in the 88,000 that we were anticipating. If we have new students that come in for like a half year, you'd see something change on that. So we are already receiving funds this year for next year, but when I give Andrea this, our accounts receivable person, the funding, I tell her, don't report that till next year, even though it's coming in between March and July. The scholarship fund and the education fund is where people can donate on their taxes, and so that does change periodically. The transportation revolving fund is coming in. I do believe there's some payments that are still outstanding. That's one I really do need to look at to see if our scholarships came in too high based on what we're budgeting of $218,600. I have to follow up with the transportation department on that. However, I know I have $218,600 in the revolving account to cover what we said we would. The building rental fees and the YMCA, that's coming in a little bit higher than we had anticipated. We did pick up an additional church coming in, operating in one of our schools. The preschool revolving is coming in higher than what we budgeted for, and the $11,675 that's still due, based on our projection, will be higher because we still have 3 months, April, May, and June, payments coming in. And the user fees for athletics, I do believe that the $70,644 will come in for the spring season. And if not, I do know I have $209,748 available in the revolving account. So I'm not concerned about any revenues at this point. And I'm open to any questions on revenues, because usually I'm out of time.
We buzzed through this evening's meeting. I appreciate that. I'm looking around the room. Dr. Silva, I'm looking to see if you put your little Zoom hand up, whether anybody has any questions about the revenues for Ms. Sherburne. I have a question, not about the revenues per se, but whether you with the no voice or Ms. Sherburne, I believe that occasionally we get questions about the fact that we rent to, that the buildings, the school buildings are used for churches, right? We rent our space out to a church, and inevitably, at least once a year, I get asked about the separation of church and state, and that. Could you speak to why we feel that is I don't want to say it in my own words, but why it's okay versus why we're not crossing over to, for instance, offering religion during the day when the students are here.
So the arrangement that we enter into with churches is a business arrangement. They're just renting space, and we would not discriminate against a group that requests, and if they meet all the requirements and they do all of the things we ask them to do, and the space is available on Sunday mornings, there's no affiliation with anything that happens during the school day with any of those organizations. So it's two totally different sort of topic areas.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Like I said, inevitably, I'm certain I'm not the only school committee member who gets to hear some questions about that. Ms. Sherburne, we are going to the big bad expense report, which is about 40 pages. So for people either watching at home or sitting in the back, this is as big as I can make it on my screen, and you get to see, oh, it's 39 pages today. And what we normally do on this particular report is that Ms. Sherburne lets us know if there are areas in the expense report on a given page, a given line item that is spending at quote-unquote too fast a rate or any particular concerns. And again, committee members, you're welcome to ask questions if you think that there's a line item. Sometimes we're concerned that line items are not being spent. So we'll start with you, Ms. Sherburne.
Yes, so each month I'm looking at these. I do a comparison between our accounts and the payroll to make sure that we're both on the same page of what positions are being paid to each account. I do plan to meet with Ms. Manzo in discussion make sure we are in line with that so that we can line those up. The variations that you may find, it could be that somebody took a day off without pay so that it's not something that we can simply just say everybody is, should be at that specific amount that we budgeted. But if we have something off that, I'll look at it. So if I see an account that's not spent, I'll find out from her why is that item happening, make sure that my staffing report has people at the same step and column that the payroll people are paying the position on. And so sometimes there are errors. Sometimes somebody moved and I didn't move them on my staffing pattern. Or if somebody hasn't been here for so many days, they didn't move up a step because they have to be here, I think it's 125 days in the previous year. And so those are the reasons why things can happen. Sometimes people get moved from one position to another, so mainly that really happens in the paraprofessional area range, so sometimes accounts can be a little misskewed on those. So those are the things I look at. My biggest areas, of course, are on page 33 is my OT 275. That's our account for substitutes, which you voted for a transfer in at this meeting. I do see that I have an account that has a negative there, and that is because something got charged to an incorrect line. So I did send Ms. Manzo a list earlier this week to make some corrections that will happen for the next meeting. And it's just that something got charged to the wrong salary line. But what we did for the substitute line of OT 275-61000, that is our regular substitute line, not our long-term substitute line. And that has, we have $93,000 left for the remainder of the year. I'm going to be quite honest with you that is probably too low, but I didn't want to move too much in and then have a surplus sitting there. So that is one area. And then OT 275-61872 it says substitute to you. That is the long-term substitute. So I kind of think of OT 275 as just one bucket that I can shift from one area to another. But because I had to go to another cost center to bring money in, that's hence why you had the transfer. And I have $60,040 in there. And again, I'm not 100% sure that that's going to be enough, but I will now be scouring all of our accounts to see where we have some surpluses. And it might be there's one person took a day off. It might be that I have somebody that's out for 4 weeks because they're taking additional time for maternity. Or it could be somebody's out on FMLA and has run out of sick time. So remember, everybody that takes their FMLA, they use their sick time first. We're paying for a sub and we're paying for them. But I don't know from day to day if, that person is, is taking a day without pay. So then I have to reach out to the payroll coordinator. And And then the other area that,
I apologize, Munis gave me a little error. I clicked on something on the report and I lost the report. So we're no longer showing the report on the screen.
okay, that's
Sorry.
okay. I only have 4 minutes. I'm going to stop on time this month. And then the other area that I'm always looking at is the SP 860 area, which is on page 38 of the report. And we did move some funding in there for the collaborative for some purchase orders that are going to be coming through. So right now, it looks like we have some funding. I moved the funding from the special education transportation line because we had some funding there that didn't materialize, so we're using it in the collaborative, and the purchase orders have not been entered. So we have that. Other than that, there is not anything that I'm concerned about. There's, other areas that, of course, I'm looking at every account. But if anybody has any specific questions,
All right, I'm looking around the
can
room at
email
the
me.
committee members. Does anybody have any questions on the expense report for Ms. Sherburne? Okay, oh, yes, Mr. Manzo.
So just really quickly, the substitute transfers that we made tonight, those aren't in this report yet?
they are.
They are, okay.
Yes, when you receive them in that, it looks like that, like a Munis report.
Yep.
I've already done it.
You've already done it, okay.
Previously, before, I used to type it up and then have you approve it, and then
Okay.
it kind of didn't make sense.
And then the other thing is, how did we do on snow removal this year?
Oh, that was a good question. That was BG. When you guys all had, does anybody have any questions for buildings and grounds? I was going to raise my hand and ask, is it going to snow? But I don't think they would have known the answer, but
North of here.
they were relying on me bringing the sunshine from Florida up,
We
right?
all were.
We all,
You don't have to shovel rain, Gene. Keep the rain coming.
Yeah, so right now, currently, we have $26,494 remaining in our encumbrance. However, the storm that made me a little late coming back up from Florida with I think they had to salt. So we probably ate that up, but we're not in a negative.
Good.
Right now.
it's good. Yeah, knock on wood. And I wish Dr. Chirocek for this committee, because the members, resident members and Councilor Rotundo won't be in our next meeting. Can we introduce our guest? I did not introduce earlier. And I would say, too, that we are hopefully next meeting going to have another resident member at our table, and that gentleman is in our audience, Mr. Dom Copeland. Hopefully will be joining us at our table next month. And now it's your turn.
All right, it's my turn. All right, Emma, come on. You can just come on up, you can just stand right here. This is Emma Puglisi. I kept saying Pugulski, so it's Puglisi. And Emma is my recommendation coming forward to the school committee tonight for the position of Director of Finance. And not everything Jean does, but most things Jean does. She'll be working with us, hopefully, doing all the financial reporting and all of the information around budgets and all of that. So a little bit later this evening, it's an odd part of the law, although I think I see why. There are two positions that school committee actually hires, and not the superintendent. They hire the superintendent and they hire the business manager. So those are two positions that have to go through school committee. And however, we did engage in a screening process, and then we had a interview committee. Mr. Manzo and Ms. Visnick were part of this interview committee, and they were all very highly recommended for Emma, and so we're bringing her forward tonight for our meeting tonight for approval from the school committee, and then after which we'll move into discussions for her appointment. So.
Fantastic. Thank you, Dr. Chirocek.
Yeah.
And thanks for
Emma
coming
is
tonight, Emma.
She did not have to come far. She's a resident of Beverly.
She'll walk.
I think she could walk. She lives very close.
4 miles.
Yes, so we're very excited. She's excited to come back to Beverly, and we're excited to have her join us here. So
Awesome.
awesome. Thank you.
All right, so I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Manzo. Thank you, Ms. Coelho. Non-debatable roll call, Ms. Coelho.
Yes.
Ms. Spanks.
Yes.
Mr. Manzo.
Yes.
Dr. Silva.
Yes.
Thank you. Myself, yes. We are adjourned at 7:31. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, I'm good.
Thank you, everyone. Welcome. Today is Wednesday, March 27th, 2024. We are in the Beverly Middle School Library. Tonight is a committee of the whole meeting. We are using a hybrid remote platform. However, all of the members are present this evening who will be present for our meeting. And I will monitor the online platform just in case anyone wishes to join us. This is allowed under the former governor's Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021 and February 12th and July 16th, 2022, and then again extending till March 31st, 2023. And now our current governor and legislature have extended this provision for 2 more years until March 31st, 2025. So we have another year of being allowed to have remote participation from the membership as well as the chair. As a reminder, Beverly does have options for remote participation, but in those instances, a quorum and the chair do need to be physically present. We are also being streamed and broadcast and recorded by BevCam, and we appreciate that service. With all of these options, it makes our meetings open and allows for participation. So thank you, BevCam, as well. Tonight is a committee of the whole meeting, which means we do not have an agenda item to address the body. However, we will have our next opportunity on April 10th at our regular school committee meeting, which is planned for 7:30 p.m. If you are interested in signing up in advance, have some thoughts you wish to share and have the chair read into the record, or wish to receive a Zoom link, you may email residentvoice@beverlyschools.org for any of those options, or you may be here in person, again, 7:30 on April 10th, and sign up. We do ask that you limit your remarks to approximately 3 minutes, and remember that you will need to state your name and address for the record. Joining us today are members of the school committee, various members of the district administration and leadership teams, and I will conduct a roll call. We do have someone trying to join here. I will conduct a roll call to make sure we can all know who is present. I'll start with our school committee, Mayor Cahill,
Here.
Kimberly Coelho,
Here.
Dr. Kenan Mackenzie DeFranza,
Here.
Ms. Karen Robinson,
Here.
Dr. Silva sends his regrets this evening. He had a conflict, so he is marked absent. Ms. Lorinda Visnick.
Here.
And I am Rachel Abel. We have 6 members present. We are also joined this evening by our superintendent, Sue Trocek,
Here.
our director of finance and operations, Jean Sherburne.
Here.
Okay. And I always get into trouble when I start naming titles. I'm going to skip the titles on the back row. We have Megan Sudak. Here. Oh my goodness. Caitlin Beleza. I know that. I do know that. Bethany Splansky. Dr. Andre Morgan. Aaron Brown. And to be introduced, Emma. Yes, okay. We're also joined by members of our educating staff and our soon-to-be resident representative. Okay, I think, and then I see, Andrea, I don't know if you are here to speak or are you simply watching? If you wouldn't mind putting in a last name for the record, that would be great. Okay. Without further ado, our first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance, and Ms. Sherburne, if you would lead us, that would be great.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for that. Next, our approval of meeting records will require a motion.
So moved.
Thank you, Mayor Cahill. And a
Second.
Second, thank you, Ms. Visnick. Were there any edits or corrections that needed to be made to this set of meeting records? I'm not seeing any. We're all here in person. All those in favor? I'm counting 6-0. Thank you so much. And now the superintendent's report.
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen. Keep me on track. All right. I have a lot of messages on my screen. All right, thank you, everybody. I first apologize in advance. I have some voice right now. It might fade as the night goes on, and if I do, I'll pass the microphone over to someone to take it up for me. I'm recovering, but the last thing to come back is going to be my voice, so I'm working on that right now. We have a few items on our agenda this evening. The first item is an overnight field trip request from a high school group to go to Italy. We're going to have a report, and sorry, that should have an asterisk on it on the Student Opportunity Act. It does have it on the agenda, though, so we're okay. I'm going to give you a budget update, and we are going to also hear an update on some information about finance and operations. We have a couple of different items that we're going to, and now it's my grandson that's calling me. I apologize. The grandmothers on this side of the table are really taking over. All right, so before we begin, and I think I'm going to invite Ms. Hior up to talk to us a little bit about her request. The superintendent recommends the approval of a BHS overnight field trip to Italy, and Ms. Hior's here to tell us all about it and answer any questions that anybody will have. Can come right up. Thank you. Public speaking class, you have that.
So I'm just looking at the slide. I'm not going to Salamanca, but
Oh, you know what? I recopied. That's my fault. I'll fix that while you talk.
but I can tell you where the trip is planned to go. So it's a 9-day trip starting in Rome,
Fixed.
then going to Tuscany, Florence, and ending in Milan. So the trip is a young women's leadership conference, and it is proposed to improve and enhance the leadership opportunities for the female representatives students at the high school. So it'll be open to freshmen, sophomores, and juniors, current freshmen, sophomores, and juniors, and it would be for next February break. So in Rome, the students are going to meet with Italian female journalists who report on things that are occurring in Italy that they have voice for. Then the field trip goes to Tuscany, Florence, where we stay on the countryside and then work a day on a female-owned and operated farm. And then we end in Milan and go to the University of Milan and have a final workshop with Milan's 30% Club. And the 30% Club is the top 30% of female scholars at the university. So there are 3 conferences that take place or workshops that the students take part in with locals to those 3 regions, and they build on their empathy skills with people different than themselves and understand and recognize their own abilities to be leaders when they come back at our school.
Madam President.
Approved?
I move it.
I'll take a motion
I move
first,
we
and then I have
approve.
some questions. Okay, Mayor Cahill is making a motion to approve.
Second.
I saw Lorinda's head nodding, so I heard her voice too first. So we have a motion and a second, and then Ms. Visnick, you have a question?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. How are the students being chosen? Who will be invited to go, or is it anybody could opt in?
Yeah, so anyone could opt in, of course, because we want to promote leaders in every form at the high school. I am here with the hat of a co-advisor of the World of Difference Club. So we'll target the World of Difference, Model UN, the Women's Empowerment Club, and there was a third club that escapes me, but and the DECA Club. So if you remember, you kindly approved a trip to London, and there were 26 students that we took, and 4 of those 26 were male. So if we just did a trip that was all females, I would be able to go and arrange that. There are other trips that are offered for males, but I can't do that. So this, I thought, would be a great opportunity.
Follow up?
Do you need any chaperones? Come on, I had to ask.
Well,
That was my first question when it came across my desk.
yeah, I think strong women leaders in our district are what the females at our school or all of our school. We hear names, but we might not see faces. So that might be a great opportunity for collaboration.
I did hit her up first.
I do think that Dot beat me to the line.
Mayor Cahill?
What's the upper end total number, number limit of students who can go? Depending on interest, right?
For safety, it would be 40 because 40 is the max that we could transport using public transportation in one vehicle. So togetherness is key.
Ms. Robinson?
Is this a new program, or like, did you just find out about it, or is it a new? Because that sounds absolutely amazing.
So the travel company that we use with London, they recently started putting leadership workshop packages together. So it's a relatively new trip, I think, just in the past 4 years. And like its focus is to have students discover who they are and how they can help. And those are the 2 thought questions that the students have to work on throughout their 3 workshops over the trip. So there is like a curriculum that they would have to take part in. So it's a work and play week that hopefully they get more out of.
I just wanted to say that would be an amazing thing to come back to Sissel with to share.
How it goes. And you just got back from another amazing trip, so.
Yeah, and honestly, there was so much that the students learned that I can't teach in the classroom.
Yeah.
So it would be good.
Ms. Visnick?
Can you speak to finances and if you have some incredible potential leader who could not afford to go, how we can try to make sure that that could still possibly happen?
Yeah, so Mr. Thomas and I have spoken about that, and there are great female leaders at the high school. There are great leaders with a lot of potential in general at the high school. So the Cabot last week held a community conversations with some great organizations, so Leading Ladies, Essex County Commission on the Status of Women, Thrive, and the Women's Fund. And the Rotary also, we would want to reach out and see if they would want to help sponsor students. So the cost of the trip right now is $5,000 that we can lock in if we have 5 students sign up by Monday. So doing that last year for London, I was able to get the opportunity approved to have the students going on the trip write letters to local organizations in Beverly, and they were able to fundraise money for transportation from the school to Logan and provide snacks for students who might have spent all of their money on candy the first couple days, which worked out very well that we had those snacks. The fundraising would be able to start sooner now that I've done a trip and done those fundraising opportunities, and I know what the timeline should look like, because we want to be able to provide scholarships for at least 3 students to go.
Do we have, yes, Mayor Cahill?
I just echo Mrs. Visnick's kind of encouragement on fundraising and offer out that I think any one of us would be happy to be involved, part of supporting in different ways, however we're able, so.
Perfect. I appreciate that.
I'll call on myself. I think having the opportunity to travel as a young person, especially as you're making decisions on what trajectory you might want your life to go, I think is super important. And I had the same question Ms. Visnick did about finding opportunities for fundraising, because $5,000 for a few days is a lot, but I understand the scope of travel. When we compare this to the Spain trip where they're living with host families, I'm sure that they're going from city to city in hotels is going to be, up an added cost. But if there is anything that, we as a committee can do to help make sure that everyone has the opportunity that deserves to go and has the real interest and inspiration to go, I think I would stand ready to help with that. So
I appreciate that. Thank you.
any other questions? Okay, we are all at the table. All those in favor of sending students to Italy with Ms. Orr, I think you will have a successful trip. I hope you get those 5 students to lock in the price before things change. Yes. Oh,
I just have one thing to add. If you need ideas on fundraising, reach out to Mr. Melanson here because he's very creative, like with winter waffle wonderlands and stuff. He's an excellent person.
Okay, thank you. I think there was something on Facebook, pictures with that. Okay,
Yeah.
perfect.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
I
very much.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Here.
All right. Next on the agenda. Microphone. I think it was awesome to have. Oh, sorry. I think it's bad enough I can't talk when I don't even turn it on. It's awesome, I think, to think about trip opportunities and trips that are not just language focused. So I think it's really excited that we're expanding sort of into that. So that's my own little narrative. All right, next on the agenda, we have, actually, I have Megan Sudak and Caitlin Beleza here to help me. We are going to talk to you a little bit about the Student Opportunity Act plan for Beverly. We are coming forward at this time with a new plan. I don't know if you can remember, but 3 years ago, I came forward with a plan at which you needed to vote and approve the SOA plan. We have had updates in it in the last 2 years, but now we're writing an entirely new plan. So, oh shoot, they didn't connect here. Where did my slides go? There it is. I don't know why that happened. All right. The Student Opportunity Act, it was enacted in 2019. We know that it focuses on providing funding to districts to serve students with the greatest needs. The actual Student Opportunity Act is a law. It's not funding. And I think there's been a lot of confusion over the years as to what SOA really represents. It's a statute that changes the funding formula and puts some requirements around funding, but it's not actual funding. Really what it is what I liken it to is we have a district improvement plan, but the Student Opportunity Act takes our district improvement plan and our vision and hones in more finely on students with great need and on areas that we identify through data that we need to improve upon as a district. I will say the first Student Opportunity Act, I think I pretty much wrote by myself. This year, when the Student Opportunity Act came up again, I said, well, that's silly. We're not going to do that. We're going to reach out to a couple of fine, awesome administrators in our district to kind of help us with that. Both Megan and Caitlin are very entrenched in doing the work of this, that aligns with this. And so they were awesome, and they have a great presentation for you tonight on what we're going to do. There's other words up there, but I don't think I need to read them. Sorry. Just a reminder, our 2023 SOA evidence-based programs that we worked on in the last plan, when you go to create your Student Opportunity Act, there are a specific list from which you choose evidence-based programs that you're going to implement within your district, within the realm of what your vision and what your design is in your district. These were the areas that we focused on in our past plan, supporting educators to implement high-quality aligned curriculum, expanding access to career technical education, and culturally responsive teaching and other strategies. I just wanted to give you sort of that backdrop to remind you what work had been done leading up to this. And give you a little timeline on SOA. So our first plan we brought forward in 2021. In April each year, we submit an amendment to the plan. We did all of those things, but this year we're required to submit a new 3-year SOA plan. And through the course of this plan, we will also be doing progress updates in the spring each year as we go along. So with that, I am going to turn it over to you guys, and you can take it from here.
Okay. Thank you for having us. So the SOA plan elements have changed a little bit, but this is pretty much what's required in order to do this plan. So first we have to look at district data, select groups. We have to do a number of different data dives, if you will. Then we have to accept 3-year targets they've given us, as well as set some others. We have to also engage families in part of the process, and then as well as, like we did previously, select some evidence-based programs that will address the certain areas. Next slide, thank you.
Next slide, please.
So, it's got Vanna. So the first thing we did do is we did a data dive and we did an initial analysis. DESE provides a dashboard that you can look and kind of look at heat maps and different areas to look at. And after looking at that, then we did kind of a triangulation of multiple sources of data. So everything from local instructional data and scores on just everyday summative exams, as well as vocal data and other student outcomes and Edwin reports. So after doing all of that, we also then looked at survey data, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. And just as we utilize a lot of our district improvement plan process data and feedback we got on that, and we've come with these focus groups to move forward. So our students with disabilities, who are identified as students with disabilities, are English language learners, low-income students, and then what's known as the lowest performing group. So DESE actually sets that group aside. They identify that for us to let us know who is the lowest percentage or students on the MCAS, and then therefore need the most significant levels of support. So we accepted all those. So places we've gotten feedback in terms of these types of this plan and other places for feedback from stakeholders were at a number of different places. I know that there was a survey sent out mid-January to both parents as caregivers as well as teachers. There's been multiple meetings that have been kind of happening across the district with Dr. Trocheck and the cabinet, along with different buildings in each building in terms of, where are we going in our district improvement plan, as well as our CPAC and LPAC. So the areas that we have selected would be, there's 3 different focus areas, and that's 1.1, which is promoting students' physical, mental health, wellness, well-being, welcoming, affirmative, and safe spaces. So we selected the integrated services for student well-being. And I'm going to explain it in just a couple minutes why we selected what we did. The second one we selected was really talking about partnerships with the district and giving meaningful, having families be engaged in a meaningful way, as well as having student voice and family voice in a variety of different areas. And the third one was more instructional based, and that is high leverage practices for all students. And that's really using MTSS processes and multilingual learners, students with disabilities, but really all students. So for the first 2, what we did was we sort of looked at all the different options. We looked at the focus groups we selected, and really, which is part of both of our jobs, really is looking at the root causes for why students may be performing the way they are, or the areas that we need help in. So for both the first 2 evidence-based practices we selected, we actually have, our district improvement plan is actually kind of targeting both of those. So the first 2 to talk about is really the chronic absenteeism piece of our district improvement plan. And one initiative that's going to be coming for that is something City Connects, along with many other people in the district, is moving forward with a campaign known as right now BPS Cares, in terms of chronic absenteeism reduction efforts. And so the Attendance Matters, which is a national organization, and they really are the ones that lead the charge in attacking chronic absenteeism, they'll be putting out their national annual slogan within the next 2 weeks. So I'm impatiently waiting for that. To be completely honest, I've contacted them about 4 times because the goal that I have, or the big picture I have, is that we'll be putting together essentially media kits. And what that would be is, in my perfect world, it would be you're walking down Cabot Street and you see stickers or posters in a variety of different places, and making it more of a community-based approach to why attendance is important. And reaching out to everybody from Beverly Main Streets to all the chambers and just all the different organizations to say, we need to make this a community-based type of effort, in that showing up for work, showing up for school, showing up really does matter. I took took an inventory of all the doctors that our students identify as who they go see, who their family physicians could be. There are over 200 doctors in our district are represented, and they are beyond just Beverly. We have students seeing people as far as Cambridge, but that's my second layer of media kits, is really sending out to doctors letters. Dr. Flaherty is already working on this, sending out letters, but also sending out handouts. And just like doctors are talking about eat your vegetables, brush your teeth, get 8 hours of sleep, you need to go to school. Because every day you're missing a chance to work on all the skills that are necessary for success. Another area talking about is September just happens to be the National Attendance Awareness Month. And so something moving forward is we've got an idea of these things called brag tags, but it's a tier 1 support where every student will have a chance to earn just a little show off item of, hey, you're making an effort and we love to see that. And then the last piece of that plan is really a back to school community event. I've actually spoken with some people in the mayor's office about working on this, and I'm working with some city councilors, but doing a back-to-school type event, fair community where we can have resources available, we can have bootstraps with backpacks, but also, have some food, have some, my goal is to get haircuts for back to school for students, have some barbers there and other people, stylists that can just do some quick trims, as well as Project Adventure has shown us some interest in coming and facilitating some events with family as well as administrators and students. And I've got a whole list that I'm going through. So that's just an example of how we can combat both of those evidence-based practices using that one piece. And the other piece of the district improvement plan is really the whole idea of fostering belonging in our school community, continuing the work that the superintendent is doing with the ambassador council, student ambassador council, and really getting that voice of students, as well as PD for, one of the ideas moving forward is PD for all staff on fostering diversity, belonging, but also looking at some core principles that we've all talked about for a long time now, as well as some of the other initiatives we've been working on. And now Caitlin will take the next one.
And our third focus area is in the high leverage practices for all students, really looking at high impact instructional strategies. So this is falling within that MTSS, that multi-tiered system support. In the initial slide that Megan was reading, it talks about academic supports and interventions, but also pulling this all the way back to look at that tier 1 instruction. What is happening for all students in their classrooms when they're with all of their peers in their grade level or their content area classroom, and looking at, how are we providing those equitable opportunities for students to access deeper learning alongside their peers. So the first part of that is identifying strengths and opportunities for growth in that tier 1 instruction. So looking at our structured lessons, explicit instruction, scaffolding, collaborative reasoning opportunities for students. So how are they engaging in academic discourse and really learning from and leveraging their knowledge with their peers. And also looking at the instructional delivery models across the grade levels. So looking at programs like special ed, like our English learner education program, like some of our tier 2 programs that even have, what is happening when we're pushing into a classroom? What happens when we pull out of a classroom? What happens when there's co-teaching going on? So really stepping back and taking this opportunity where we're kind of in year 3 of elementary ELA implementation of Wit and Wisdom, year 2 at 5th grade with Wit and Wisdom, a new curriculum for 6 through 8. It's really this great space for us to really look at what is this program giving us, and then what do Beverly students need in order to really access it and be successful at their highest potential. Next to that then comes providing frequent opportunities for learning walks and teacher reflection, including collaboration with key building tier 2 colleagues. So ensuring that we're bringing different stakeholders to these conversations, we're inviting other stakeholders out into the classrooms to say, hey, this is a class with some else. Let's get the ESL teacher doing some of those walkthroughs. Or there are students who are also on IEPs. Let's get a special ed teacher or someone else in so we can really broaden and build our capacity as teacher leaders and as administrators and coaches. And then the third piece of that is looking at that ongoing professional development for educators to enhance cultural competence, understanding of equity issues, and the ability to create an inclusive learning environment. So a lot of this does align with what we did the past 3 years, but now adding additional layers on and being super intentional about what it is we're doing and why are we doing it and how is it impacting students in a way that is going to move them forward throughout our school system and again, a way to be successful. At the bottom is an example of what this could look like. So this winter, spring 2024 STEM exploration, which I'll start by saying grew very organically just from student and teacher voice. So at the high school, we've been doing work with the Project Adventure. We kicked off our spring session with just hey, here's a quadrant. Step into a space that's going really well for you in school. Step into a place that's challenging. Step into a place now, content area. What's going really well for you in content? ELA is really great. English is great. Now what's struggling for you? What is really challenging? And just using this kind of anecdotal evidence and data from students to say, wow, these STEM areas, these math and science classes seem to be a place where some of our English learners are saying that they are having challenges. Why? Why is this happening? And then at the middle school, there were some teachers that went to our STEM director here saying, hey, I've worked with L's before, but I've never had so many newcomers, or I haven't worked with L's in 6 years, or I have curriculum, I don't know what I'm doing with. Help me. Please come in, take a look, let's do this work together. So really leveraging those two different stakeholders, our students and our teachers, to say, this is an opportunity to put content and an ESL together to really do something impactful. So I've been working with both Jim Grocke here at the middle school and then Jennifer Thomas at the high school to do some different walkthroughs. And then together we've been having some feedback conversations with the teachers to again have that lens of content to say, how does this align with the standards? How is this looking for high expectations and rigor for all students? Is there alignment in our NTACs? And then for me to look at it from that language piece, how is language visible for our English learners? How are they actively participating at a level that they're at right now, knowing they might not have all the English yet, but they still have a lot to contribute. So it's been really successful. I have been super, super excited to get in there, which is why I'm here talking about this part of it, and really just start to unpack what is it our teachers need from us, right? We have so many resources, which is phenomenal. And how do we kind of entrench ourselves more intentionally in the work so that we can then build, and that's kind of the goal, at least with this part this summer, is to say, for science and math at the middle and high school, how do we start to build in time? How do we carve out space in our year to say, this is when the ESL teachers are going to be here, or Caitlin's going to be here, or special ed representative's going to be here, to help really unpack the curriculum and what you might need at a given time. So it's an entry point. We're really committed to the work for STEM, but knowing that this is not exclusive to STEM, not exclusive to multilingual learners, right? This plan is also looking at students with disability and our students who are low income as well in our focus groups. So this could then be replicated with different stakeholders depending on what the focus is. What is the content area? What's the composition of the classroom?
And so this just goes back to show you visually aligning those three areas that we selected and then aligning it with the district improvement plan. And like Dr. Turchek said, you know, they parallel each other in many ways. And the whole point, district improvement plan is for all students. And the SOA is really targeting and making sure that we are looking at our data and really diving deep to find the root causes and how we can then apply these things to those subgroups. And with that, I think we are complete.
All right. And I mean, I would just say that the work that these two have done to bring to life, I think, the pieces that we always wonder about. So the district improvement plan, when we splash it up there, looks fancy, but you know, when we talk about high yield or high impact instructional strategies, what do we really mean, and how is that going to impact outcomes for students? And so I really appreciate the data dive that you did and the way that you've kind of turned this into it for us. So it is, I am required to bring it forward to the school committee. You all are required to, or I'm going to ask that you will make a motion to approve it. I need to submit it on April 1st, so that's why we're here tonight.
And to be clear, we're looking for a motion to approve
The Student Opportunity Act
the
plan.
the Student Opportunity Act, but for these evidence-based.
Right, so
areas.
I think that what we're asking is that we're telling you what we're including in our Student Opportunity Act plan. The motion for you is that you approve the plan as written for Beverly, that it aligns with the vision and goals that you have for what we would be doing under the Student Opportunity Act.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. And then I see Mayor Cahill, you have a question or a comment. Oh, you were going to make the motion.
I got something.
Okay. Do any school committee members have questions for Ms. Beleza or Ms. Hudak? No questions. Okay. Ms. Coelho.
I don't have a question. I just have input. I appreciate everything that you do. My son appreciates everything you do, and I appreciate what you do for him as well. And the amount of change that I have seen in my own child in elementary school since City Connects has helped him is incredible. And I'm sure Miss Spolansky appreciates that too. And maybe Miss Smith too, and she's not here because
We'll make a list.
Thank you.
It is great, and it's helped him out a lot too. So it's obviously helped a lot of other children as well.
Thank you.
Fantastic team. I have a fantastic team. No questions.
No question. I guess I'll just offer my comments that I think since we initiated City Connects and since we've had more presence to understand the needs of our EL students, having you both come to our meetings has been really helpful to understand that piece of our district and the work that we need to do. So I appreciate your time and your preparation. It seems like you thoroughly investigate everything.
I know, I'm long-winded.
Ms. Riznick.
I'd like to comment on your first slide, your first example about involving the businesses. I want to just say I think that's a fantastic idea, in the very least, because I believe only 25% of our residents have children in the schools. And so when a given taxpayer thinks, oh, like, okay, I don't want to, my taxes are going up, and they're like, I'm not sending any kids to school anymore.
Right.
Al Visnick. And, so, ouch. But it's like the value of the school system and how well our schools are doing absolutely ties into the value of our overall community. So involving the greater community in activities that directly tie to the schools, I think will give us immeasurable upside. So I really appreciate that, and I really also like the idea of the barbers. Right at the beginning of school, there are a lot of barriers for any given child or any given family unit to say, okay, I need to go back to school, and how am I going to clear all these barriers to get there? And we know that there's just a ton of social pressure there as well. So any barriers that can be removed by saying, hey, we're having this big thing, and oh, you need a haircut? Here's Mr. Moby Cuts or whomever, right? Ian Visnick really likes him, by the way. Just absolutely fantastic. So thank you.
Ms. Robinson.
I think it just made me think of, that would be a nice thing for students to do as well, to help out interns or NHS community service, anybody who has to do any type of community service. That would be
Absolutely.
super helpful.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll be tapping into as many as I can.
DECA project.
Still have some pull with some of those groups, so.
Okay, looking around the table, I don't see any more questions or comments. All those in favor of the Student Opportunity Plan as presented? I think you'll make your April 1st deadline.
Awesome. Thank you very much,
Yes,
and
sir.
thank you both very much.
Thank you. Thank you all very much.
Yes.
I make a motion.
Sure.
I'd like to move that we congratulate and thank Megan Sudak and Caitlin Beleza for such incredibly outstanding and professional and amazing work. Third.
Fourth. Yeah. All those in favor?
There you go.
Thank you both.
Thank you. All right, and moving on, the next item on the agenda is just an update on the FY25 budget process. Thank you for those of you who have had the opportunity to come in and meet with me. If you haven't already, please set a time. I'm happy to kind of go into more one-on-one opportunity to talk about where we're going and what we're doing. But tonight, I just have sort of an overview. Again, a preview of our district improvement plan, which I do really continue to share with you. Sometimes when we're in private, I go want, because I say the same things all the time. However, this is not a want. This is really what we build our plans on. And now I think it was a super awesome opportunity tonight to see how we use our plan, right? And how it builds down and how we work with it. And again, when we're planning our budget, we're looking at our goals, we're looking at what we hope to accomplish, we're looking at the vision that you all have for the Beverly Public Schools and making decisions based upon that. So, the first two slides are repeats. These are just a reminder that there were some ESSER positions that throughout the past 3 years, we've been very transparent with all of you about what positions we had added because we had the opportunity to be able to do that with resourcing that will no longer be in existence after the ESSER money ends at the end of this year. And so there's an adjustment of some FTEs at both the elementary and at the middle. And so just keeping your eye on that, I just like to make sure that everybody understands that and remind all people of that. There are no positions at the high school that are related to ESSER, so that's why there's nothing on at the high school. This is just a recap, a slide to kind of help you with some benchmark numbers and where we are in the process. Just a reminder, our FY24 appropriated budget was $72,653,940. Of that, salaries and benefits is 85%, $61,605,686. We have some contractual obligations. By that, I mean these are obligations that we have to pay no matter what. We don't have options. They're not optional expenses in any way. We have steps in all of our BTA agreements, equaling $695,320. We have lanes or columns equaling $455,000. We have our healthcare obligation, and again, we're anticipating, we're going to call this a conservative estimate, Mayor, of 6.5%. Hopefully, it may not make it all the way to 6.5, but we want to make sure that we're accounting for the expenses. And then finally, the special education increases, and really, I'll talk a little bit more about those, but those are, there are some things that are carried over from the past year. If you remember, we had the OSD increase of $775,000 last year, which we absorbed. Circuit breaker does kick in, but circuit breaker does not cover all of those expenses, so we had to make some adjustments based on that. We had some increases at the North Shore Consortium. Some of our programming over there, one of the programs has a 16% increase, and then other programs are at an 8% increase, as well as we have 2 or 3, I'm not sure the exact number, known out-of-district placements that we have already committed to for the coming year that are new out-of-district placements from last year. And so that means that entering into the conversations, we have obligations of $2,674,640. You're all aware that we're in negotiations with units A and B and C, actually. And I just put some numbers up there so that you can kind of have that benchmark in your head. All of our contracts combined, all our units, all our individual contracts, a 1% COLA is $504,220, and for just units A and C, it's $407,000. So those are really just numbers to kind of help ground you and as we go through the process. Again, the legislative process around this, we do now know at least our governor's proposed Chapter 70 budget. It's an incremental increase of $133,000, making the governor's proposed Chapter 70 money $14,678,461. And we will hear in the next coming months from the House Ways and Means and the Senate, and then we'll have our final Chapter 70 money. But I put this up at this point in the slide because there's a couple of things that I want you to be able to kind of visualize as we go. We have, typically, we wait for our Chapter 70 money and we hope for an incremental increase. That original proposal for legislation around the Student Opportunity Act was that it was going to redefine the algorithm for which all of the decisions around funding to the cities go as it regards school. And it has benefited us for a couple of years, but this year, not so much. So I wanted to kind of put together a reminder about what Chapter 70 is, some information about what impacts Chapter 70. We are not lower, but we did not see the incremental increases that we've seen in past years. A couple of things impact Chapter 70 funding, and it's really important for everybody to understand. At this point in time, Beverly is back to what is called a minimum aid district. That really is basically a hold harmless, benchmark at a $30 per student incremental increase, and that's where we are right now. A couple things that are important when determining Chapter 70. Always it's that for us, some of the factors that brought us into the minimum aid, I believe the minimum aid sort of category, a lower percentage of low-income students. And I want to say, I hope I don't get a lot of questions on this one because I'm still working on wrapping myself around it, but we were impacted. In January, there was a reduction of $380 million of the budget. If you remember the 90C cuts, I think that's what they were called, shifted. For us, it was significant because it shifted eligibility for some of our families in Beverly. And so we had a drop in the number and the percentage of the low-income students that were defined as low-income students for Beverly. We also had a drop in enrollment of 75 students from October 1 of 23 to October 1 of 24, I think, or maybe 22 to 23. And so that impacts it. The most significant impact for us is the inflation rate. And this year, for the past 2 years, the Chapter 70 was calculated with a 4.5% inflation rate. We know that the inflation rate was higher, both of those years, 7.9 and 8.2 in the consecutive years, but the SOA legislation also capped the inflation rate at 4.5. What was missing in the Student Opportunity Act is in previous years prior to that, if you had not been, if the inflation rate was not calculated at the actual rate but at the capped rate, that amount would be carried over and you could apply it in future years. This year, it's not in the Student Opportunity Act, and so therefore they're calculating it at an inflation rate of 1.35, which is the main real issue for us in Beverly. What does that look like? In incremental funding over the past 5 years, this is just a bar graph, that in FY21, our incremental increase was $867,000. In FY22, it was $460,000. In FY23, it was $2,500,000. In FY24, it was $1.3 million. And in FY25, it's $133,000. So in terms of planning, thinking that we were going into, the still in the implementation of the SOA funding, I was anticipating a higher increase of an incremental increase for Beverly. That did not actualize. And I think we also have to keep in mind that in our city council meeting, Senator Lovely indicated that even that 133s, that's in the governor's budget. It hasn't made its way all through the whole process. This is just a similar graph. It's just the percentage of incremental increases, and the graph is just similar to the prior one that I showed. So I just wanted to share that with you all, just so that you understand, in terms of Chapter 70, that increase that we got was far lower than we had anticipated or than we had hoped as we go forward. So that being said, what I want to share with you tonight, just as we're going through this budget process, we're looking at a number of things. In our last meeting, I had told you that I was meeting with all of the building principals and department heads, hearing what things they were hoping to see incorporated in the budget. Most of those meetings were, how can we run the level serviced, district? We don't want to take services away where we can. And so these are just some of the assumptions that we have going, and I wanted to share them with you. I know in some of our individual meetings, I went a little more granular, but this is just a little more general for everyone to kind of be able to wrap themselves around. So our assumption in K1 and 2 classrooms is that we have a target range of under 22 students per classroom. In grades 3 and 4, we have a target range for under 25. I will say that we're watching the enrollment for we have one EL teacher that goes halftime between 2 buildings right now. We're working closely and watching that enrollment. That is That was one of the ESSER-funded positions that we had hoped to move into the appropriated, but at this point in time, we're not making that decision until we see how those enrollments play out. And so what that means, given the current class sizes that we have across the district, is that we would be looking at about 4 elementary teachers that we would, we've shown every year that sometimes we add a 3rd grade, drop a 4th grade, drop a 4th grade, add a 5th grade. And so that is the FTEs that would be impacted for that. In middle school, again, that target class range for 25. We know we have a very large class going into 5th grade, so there's some additions in 5th grade. There's some deductions in other places, and so it's a net of at this point, one middle school teacher. And then at the high school, we've met with Mr. Thomas. We're doing a lot of work around the schedule, looking at class enrollments and class sizes, taking into account some attrition that we have for some retirements, and so we think that we may have the opportunity to have about 6 fewer teachers at the high school based upon scheduling and looking at how we're doing the scheduling. At the district level, we are, I mentioned the 1 million optimistic number for 1 million for special education increases. Again, we have some strategies that we're doing to offset the expenses. I would say that the actual expenses will exceed 1 million, but we're looking at ways to offset that, and that part of it is using circuit breakers. So for the past few years, we've worked really hard to build up our circuit breaker revolving to 100%, which is the recommended amount for carrying over each year. In way long ago, years past, we used to have a special education, what were they called? Yeah, something like that. There was a word for them, I can't think of them. Contingency accounts, we don't have those anymore. Circuit breaker, that whole process of utilizing circuit breaker has kind of allowed us to go away from that. Our plan at this point, we will be dipping into FY25 circuit breaker by about, I think, 30% in our current estimate, which is more than we would like, but something that we're looking at as we build the budget, trying to figure out ways to make sure that we're keeping our expenses as tight as we can. There's a technology increase. I have a slide coming up in a bit that's going to allow you to know a little bit more about what we're asking for with our technology increase. We're looking at our assistant business manager and assistant transportation manager. Right now, those roles are unfilled, so I'm not including the funding for that going forward. We're not eliminating the FTEs, should in fact we find funding sources and need to bring them back, but at this point, we're eliminating those. And then we do have a request to move one nurse from ESSER in. That was one of the positions all along that we talked about moving in, as well as an OT. We need an additional OT in our special programs. And in addition, we have anticipated COLAs for both units A, B, and C as we are still in negotiations and hopeful that we can get those contracts settled so we know what those numbers would be. And then finally, additional enrollment and reorganization adjustments could include up to 7 paraprofessionals as we look across the district at either unfilled or opportunities where we can make adjustments there. I talked about the technology cost analysis. So we've worked very hard over the last few years to kind of build what we know is a sustainable cycle for replacing our devices. I remember when I first took over at Ayers, we had 4 computers and they were like 10 years old and there was no other computers. So we wanted to work really hard to make sure that we're keeping the devices that we all depend on so much up to date and ready and available. Currently, in our budget, we budget $269,781 for our devices. But as you can see, our costs are really $548,000. We're very fortunate in particularly much credit to Steve Palomo for continuing to pursue opportunities for offsets. ECFC is a federal opportunity of which we've been able to get, I think, $300,000 in one year and $300,000 in another year, and I think we're looking at maybe $150,000 more of just federal money that comes in, and it's really because our technology department does such a great job of tracking and understanding and being able to report in a apply for these opportunities as they come. We also have used ESSER for the last 3 years. I worked very hard to try to not put things in ESSER that were going to carry over, but it was kind of hard not to use ESSER for some of the technology expenses that we had, largely, especially in improving our infrastructure, our wireless infrastructure, and, looking at all of the work that we're doing around that. And so where the request that we're coming forward with is to increase the technology line this year by 170,000. But that's not going to cover the total increase, because on the next slide, you'll see our software obligations around licensure. I put up here just an example of what the laptop cycle is. We attempt to spread it out over 4 years, and so that every 4 years, we're replacing a different set of laptops. So Beverly High School is in line. The teachers at Beverly High are in line to receive new laptops in the coming year. Their laptops will be 5 years old when we go into FY25. The elementaries would be the next year. We bought them both, and that largely was much help from the city with the some of the CARES money that came in. We were able to utilize that and bring in some new laptops at a time when we really needed it. That would put them in the second year, and then Beverly Middle School in the next year, and then central office. We do that so we don't have a $600,000 expense, but we're kind of sending that out over certain times. And then finally, the teacher iPads. We have a line item in there, excuse me, of 61,000. While the iPads are operating, the problem is that Apple is no longer going to support iPads beyond the year 2018. And so we believe that we need to take advantage this year and roll those. These are the teacher iPads that the teachers use to support students in their classrooms. We replace the fifth grade iPads. Every year, the rising fifth graders get new iPads. They keep them for all 4 years. The eighth grade iPads are then likely, most of the time we trade them in and we get some value for them. Say an iPad costs $450, I don't even know if I'm using the right numbers, we might get $120 back per iPad. So when we do that, we roll that money right back into the account to kind of support it. But we have a 4-year cycle for our middle school iPads and a 5-year cycle for the elementary, because the elementaries aren't quite as rough on the iPads as the middle schoolers are. So we think we can get a 5-year cycle out of the iPads for them. So that's what we're spending for devices. We also have licensing to consider. So one of the other great benefits of ESSER has been over, I want to say over almost $2 million worth of curriculum materials that we've been able to buy, which is awesome. But the curriculum materials that you buy in 2024 are not like those that you bought in 2010 when they were a book and they would last as long as you can keep them. Almost everything we purchase comes with a licensing requirement. And so those licensing requirements also require us to develop a cycle of renewal on our curriculum licenses. So we have some, Dr. Flaherty, if you could see the wall in her room, has them all lined up, and we're setting up a cycle of renewal. So much like the devices, we're renewing about $225,000 worth of licenses each year so that we're not hit with them all at once in 1 year. And then the operational licenses, the majority of those are annual. And so we know that we need them to run our school district and to run our, the work that we do. And so right now, this line item is budgeted at $304,000. Again, the plan for us is to add 170 this year, and then next year 150, and the year after that 100, and then we will be fully funding. But we have the luxury to cycle it in over those 3 years because of the amount of offset money that we've been able to procure to kind of help us keep going. That brings us to the appropriated budget. We know last year the city contribution was $58,109,459. Our Chapter 70 was $14,544,000, and the final budget was $72,653,940. We're still working together. I have some numbers. I'm working with the mayor. I've shared some of them with all of you. We're working on trying to define where is it and what is it that we can do. And I know the mayor and Bryant are coming back to us with some conversations. And next time we meet and talk about budget, I think Bryant's going to come a month from now and talk to us about, and I'll have more finite numbers for you, and they'll have more finite numbers for us. So again, legislative process, we know we're still in it, we don't know. I will say that I have 2 meetings in the next 4 weeks in front of legislators. On the 14th, I believe the mayor and Ms. Abel and myself, and I think Ms. Flowers and Bryant are meeting in a round table with just North Shore folks. And on the 29th,
That's with the Senate Ways and Means Chair.
that's with the Senate Ways and Means Chair. On the 29th, I'm meeting in a legislative breakfast with the North Shore Roundtable at Whittier Tech, where we have put together sort of our compelling things that we hope they will consider about the impact that it's having on the school budgets in our towns. So those things we're looking forward to doing that. These are our next steps. Tonight is our budget discussion. On the 24th, in April, we'll hear from House Ways and Means. On the 24th, we have yet another meeting. That's the one at which we'll have Bryant join us as well. On the 30th, we have a notice of public hearing in our local newspaper. In May, we'll hear from the Senate Ways and Means. May 6th is my deadline to release that draft budget to the public to be reviewed for the May 8th public hearing. And then on the 22nd, you're scheduled to vote on what you want to submit to the City of Beverly. And then in June, we'll have those budget sessions with City Council. And our new fiscal year begins in July, on July 1. So that's just sort of some information to share with you about the budget. I'm happy to keep meeting with you. Please continue to come in. It's very important as we go through. I love hearing your feedback. And we'll continue to, fine tune and work numbers and hope for optimistic news when we hear from health insurance and Chapter 70 and anything else that comes our way. So, I guess any questions?
Looking around the table, I don't see any questions at this point.
All right.
Thank you so much
Awesome.
for that overview.
All right, thank you. And then next on our final for me, and it's a good thing because I'm about to lose my voice. Some information on finance and operations. And so I think did we talk about Jean retiring yet? Jean's leaving us. And so Jean is retiring as of July 14th. Is that your birthday?
That's my birthday.
It's her birthday. And as such, so I have to say, I laugh. I reached out to Annie Davidson, who's works with Erin in HR, and I said, could you just tell me like the job description that Jean does? Because, we really want to, we're posting for a new position, and I looked at it and I was like, oh my, Jean, what have you been doing all these years? We have known for a while that Jean was planning on retiring in the central office, and we have been working hard on a succession plan on what that would look like. We know that, we know when we brought in Erin as our Director of Human Information and Human Resources, those things already came off of Jean's plate. We knew that we needed to kind of take some of the responsibilities and share them out. But we also knew that we were looking to find a way to make sure that we have sustainable and really strong leadership in our finance department, and with a new director of finance that would come in. We also know that when we posted the position for director of finance, we were very clear that it was a finance job for right now to start, right? We were looking for someone to come in and do all of the finance pieces that Jean manages so well. And so we are actually reorganizing making 2 boxes for one Jean. And so I come forward tonight with 2 things. First of all, I want to share with you the changes that we're making just inside the department. And the first is to kind of shift Erin Brown, who is currently our Director of Information and Human Resources, to our Executive Director of Operations after Jean leaves. And as part of that, the responsibilities that we're shifting into her role, which she currently has already assumed some of them, would be oversight of budget development, human resources, information and technology, transportation, buildings and grounds, food service, and finance. And those are sort of that oversight kind of role. Erin has also recently gotten her business manager's license, so we congratulate her on that one. A nice, she did that in her year-long internship under Jean through the MASBO organization. MASBO is an organization. Once we kind of figured that all out, we were able to craft a job description for a director of finance to more accurately represent what we were looking for and what our needs were. The past 2 weeks, we've been conducting interviews. We had posted the job. We did some screening interviews, and then we selected 4 or 5 candidates for final interviews, and we put together an interview committee. Ms. Visnick was part of our interview committee. We also had Mr. Manzo from our Finance and Facilities Committee. We had Megan Hart was our principal representative. We had a couple of members of Jean's staff within the office, and we conducted interviews. And I'm very pleased to come forward tonight and introduce to you the candidate that I would recommend that the school committee approve for our new director of finance. I did share with you in our documents her resume, and did you get all that? Did you get a resume and all those things, right? No? Sorry. Okay. Well, we have a snapshot of her resume up here on a slide that will help. But she is here tonight. Emma, if you would come up. This is Emma Puglisi. I did it right. And Emma's going to sit right up here and join us. And I'm going to first talk a little bit about what the job that how we outlined the job for Emma. Really, as a director of finance, looking at budget management in all departments, taking care of all grants managements, all revolving accounts, accounts payable and warrants, accounts payables and receivables, payroll stipends and 403B, and Medicaid, which I think is a pretty good description of what you saw in our moving forward. So I can tell you a little bit about Emma. Emma was first of all, she was the final candidate that was forward from the committee, and I think she was selected in a unanimous position from that group. She has her bachelor's degree in accounting and business administration. She has served as an accountant and director of financial aid at Montserrat, right here in Beverly. She has been a controller for the YMCA of the North Shore. She's been a town accountant in Marblehead, and she is currently the assistant business manager for the Marblehead Public Schools. And so we're excited to invite her here, and I would open it up to you. I would make the recommendation that you hire Emma as our new Director of Finance.
Madam President,
Yes, Ms. Visnick.
I would like to make a motion that we hire Miss Emma. I'm not going to attempt her last name. Would be like a really bad first impression.
Second.
As our new
Director
of Finance.
And was that Ms. Robinson?
That was me.
Okay.
And I
We have
will,
a motion and a second, so we now have a proposal on the table. Are there comments or questions? Mayor Cahill.
Do you mind pronouncing your last name for us?
Not at all. Puglisi.
That was pretty phonetic. Thank you.
We're going to remember that one.
Ms. Abel.
Ms. Visnick.
I would like to just kind of report out from the interview process. I was very thankful to be included, and so I sent Ms. Brown a little note about that. And as Dr. Trochik said, from our Finance and Facilities Subcommittee, Mr. Manzo, who, as many of us know, is a previous school committee member, previous head of F&F, previous school committee president, was also there. And we interviewed in person 4 different candidates, and it was, in fact, unanimous that Miss Emma was our number one across all the candidates for all of us. We all agreed she was our top choice, and then so I think that speaks volumes when you're in a room with 6 other people, and I can't actually imagine. I felt almost bad because you're in this room in a big circle like this, and all these people are asking you questions, right? Would not necessarily be my favorite interview style, but from a interviewer point of view, after each candidate, we kind of did a little debrief, and we talked, and what did we like, what did we not like, and for 6 or 7, because at some point in time, Paul Castanway from the finance department was also at the table. He could not stay for all 4 candidates, but so for some point in time we had 7, and then we had 6, and for all 7 people to agree that we had one number 1 candidate, I think speaks volumes. And so as the chair of FNF and as a member of the interview committee, I very strongly endorse this recommendation. I'm actually just incredibly pleased as punch, because if Dr. Trocheck had not taken the recommendation from the interview, then we went into a myriad of the ranked choice voting was crazy after the number 1 choice. So I just want to really emphasize from a FNF point of view, my recommendation on top of the superintendent's for this candidate.
Calling myself. I appreciate the forethought and the planning that the administration has done. As much as we don't want to see Ms. Sherburne go, I think your next chapter is filled with all kinds of wonderful things. And so I think it was really helpful for the district and for the continuity to put that mentorship in place, to look at the job description, to make it a reasonable position to walk into here in our district. And I also want to just state my appreciation for Ms. Sherburne agreeing to come back to help close out the ESSER grant reporting requirements, because I think that you really have done a lot for us, and we will miss you, but we are so thankful for the way in which you've done it. So thank you. And welcome. I don't want to be presumptuous. Are there any other questions for our candidate here? We ready to vote? All those in favor of appointing, subject to the rest of the negotiation? Yes. Okay. All those in favor? We are unanimous, 6-0. Welcome.
Madam President, can I make a comment?
You may.
Because I'm afraid we might not go till 10 o'clock if we don't say some more things. No, I just want to say I'm very excited that Mrs. Visnick said that it was a unanimous vote of everybody involved in the process. Because when we built this building, we were unanimous in wanting AI3 to be our architects, and we had to kind of throw ourselves in the mercy of the MSBA because they have a role in picking our architect. And then when we hired on our construction management team, it was similarly a first vote, 7-0 in the process. And I feel like we got a great result here. So maybe that's just how it's going to work with Ms. Puglisi.
We're very confident.
Excited.
All right.
And Ms. Sherburne has to promise that she won't kind of slide out without giving us a chance to celebrate her, because otherwise
we'll be
we'd have to sell these things tonight. We're going to have a party, aren't we, Jean?
I think so.
Okay.
At least a birthday party.
All right. All right.
Well,
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you so much, and enjoy your long commute home. I understand it's quite distant. Thank you.
All right. I have one final note for this evening. I sent you all an email this afternoon, and I know that Erin Sweeney had the opportunity to meet with her staff this afternoon. Erin has informed us that she will be retiring at the end of this school year. We are sad to see her go, but we also know that she is very excited for a new journey in her next chapter for herself. And that leaves us with the need to think about a new search for Cove Elementary School principal search. So what I'd like to do is, we've created a timeline. I want to share with you, again, we've known for a few weeks, but in deference to Mrs. Sweeney, we were letting her share it with her staff when she had the opportunity. But we've been in the background doing all kinds of planning, because that's what we do. So we have put together a timeline. We know that today she met with the Cove staff. We will be posting the position tomorrow. It is March, and the school year is coming to a quick close, so we want to make sure that we get the position posted so that we can get the candidates, track candidates that are interested. On Wednesday, April 3rd, we will attend a staff meeting at Cove and share with them the information that we have and send a survey out to them, looking for what they're looking for in their next principal. We will do likewise with a parent caregiver meeting on Wednesday evening in the Cove Library at 6 p.m. On Friday, April 12th. So we will, during both of those meetings, offer out people the opportunity to request to be included on the interview committee. The deadline for those requests will be Friday, April 12th. And then on Monday, April 15th, the interview committee members will be notified. On Wednesday, April 24th, the initial committee will meet to review criteria, interview questions, confidentiality training. We will hold interviews on April 30th and May 1st. On May 2nd, we'll do reference checks. And then on May 3rd, I will interview the finalists myself. And by Monday, May 6th, I'll announce, who we are moving forward as the new Cove School principal. So that is the timeline as we go forward. Here is the makeup, sort of just a reminder about the community engagement that we're going to have, visioning with the Cove staff, and then visioning with the parent community on April 3rd. And then finally, this is the makeup of the interview committee. Erin, as our Director of Information and HR, will be facilitating the process. Included on the committee will be the Director of Pupil Personnel Services. I think we had Dot on here too, but I don't think I didn't update my slide. Sorry, Dot, you are on there. Yeah, it didn't connect. One teacher from grades K to 2, one teacher from K to 4, 2 parents, a specialist teacher, a special education teacher, 1 school committee member, 1 paraprofessional, and the Director of Opportunity Access, along with Dr. Flaherty. So that's the, and an elementary principal that we didn't have on that list too. So I don't know why I don't have the same one as you do. I know, I don't know why. I'm almost ready to give up. So that is what the committee will bring forward, 2 finalists. I will interview the 2 finalists, and I make that final appointment, the final appointment by the superintendent. Just, again, I know this is really new and just out there, but if anyone's interested in being considered for the screening committee, can send your letter of interest to Erin Brown, CC Annie on it, and we'll include in your letter your current position as well as a statement describing your interest. And we do, we do require that you're able to attend all of the dates that we've selected in order to be considered for the committee. So, and that is the end of my slideshow.
Thank you so much.
Right.
Next, we'll move to the school committee chair updates. In your packet and over the weekend, you received a copy of essentially the current posted version of Beverly School Committee and Superintendent operating protocols. This is the version of our norms and protocols that we last worked on. It came to my attention that your humble chair neglected to bring it forward last term when Dr. Silva joined us. I also noticed some typos and a name change. And so the version that I sent to you essentially updates the current version of our protocols, and we would be looking to have this sent around by DocuSign for our signature to replace the outdated version on our website. But I thought it might also be helpful to look at some of the policies that directly relate to our norms and protocols, just to give people an opportunity to consider if we want to sign as it is currently drafted, or if any member wish to bring to the table while we're in open session any proposed changes. Also of note, the policies that were included, which are AA, AB, AD, describe our school district legal status, the people and the school district, and our mission statement. Those are here for a first reading tonight. We have an opportunity to review all of our policies in a 5-year cycle. And so one of the options that we have are no changes at all, and we can mark it as reviewed for the 5 years. Or at our second reading, we will, of course, entertain any changes that members feel we might need to consider. So it's kind of a twofer on A and B. And I think for conversation's sake, I'm willing to make a motion that we accept the protocols, operating protocols, with the typographical changes as it was.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table to adopt with the typographical edits and the changes to the names. Is there any conversation, questions, suggestions? Oh, go ahead. I was going to say, I did have an opportunity to talk to Dr. Silva in advance. He had reviewed this over the weekend, and he sent along his comfort in signing it as it is presented. Oh, he has no discomfort. Has no discomfort. Yes.
I don't remember. But, you know, Madam President and Mrs. Visnick, because we've been doing this together the longest, you know that some of this language is language that I've grappled with before. And it, very specifically, it's under demonstrate professional and collegial relations with one another. The second and the third, but particularly the second point, base our decisions on available facts, vote our convictions, avoid bias, and uphold and support the decisions of the majority of the committee once a decision is made. And the only scenario that I envision, and we have talked about this, is, and we haven't ever been there, and I'm grateful we haven't, but as mayor, in working through the whole of the budget year and working year in and year out all together, working collectively on school budget, for my part, working with the finance director and all the department heads on the city side and taking all that into consideration, if the school committee passed a school budget that I, as mayor, didn't believe we could afford, I may find myself in a position in that role of then needing to disregard, that's the wrong word, put forward a budget number to the city council for approval that were not the number that got passed. And as I said, we've never come to that, I hope it never does, but if I was left in a position of not believing we could afford that, or any mayor, under our charter, that would be a problematic piece of language for the mayor to sign on to. I'm trying to, when I started saying, I don't remember what we did last time, because we talked about the same concern I
Right,
raised.
and I'm wondering
I'm
if
not remembering.
point number 4 that makes reference to BCB, I know that we changed our policy to say accepting the mayor in his role as the mayor in policy.
Thank you, that was our kind of workaround,
Yeah, I
our
think that-
resolution
yeah.
to it, right?
I think that's why there is that reference to policy BCB, but Ms. Visnick, you're the policy chair. I don't know if you.
I did open BCB,
Okay.
as opposed to the other policies that were in our packet today. It kind of tricked me that BCB wasn't
Yep.
in our packet. But I think that we had a quite lengthy discussions. My memory serves me correctly. If it does, that you can sign this in your role as a school committee member, and you wear a different hat. And so if you were to encounter the situation you just described, then it's not like you would be breaking this norm, because you would not be wearing your school committee hat at the point in time when you did the other thing, right? As opposed to the rest of us, we also have 2 hats. We have individual citizen hats, right? And we talked about the fact that and you do often see me at the podium at city council meetings speaking on behalf of myself. So we don't ever give up our individual, our rights to represent ourselves as individuals. We often have to wear our hats as school committee members or recuse ourselves. So there's a distinction, I think, as we read this, and we've discussed this in the past, around your distinctions being different than our distinctions, and that balance. And to be very explicit, it is a balance, and everyone has to recognize that. And whether we all sign this and strive to do it, whether we actually get there or not, is another issue. So I think that it's it's a great thing to bring up. It's a great thing to note. I personally don't have any problems with that. But again, the three of us have discussed that before, and because we've been hanging out here for kind of a long time. So I just want to bring that perspective that we have talked about it before, and we have talked about those distinctions, and hopefully that can help the other committee members if they feel any kind of angst over that.
And since I'm 3 years delayed in bringing this to the table, we can wait if you think that you would have alternative language that you think needs to be substituted.
Or if you want to go read BCB.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate you flagging BCB because it's microphone coming. I appreciate you flagging that BCB policy because I think that is how we solved that last time. So if we could wait a meeting, I could go back and look at that.
Sure. I'll move to table this and we'll look at it on April 10th.
Okay, thanks.
And then again, for a first reading or review, there's no changes. I did trick myself. Yes.
I rather appreciate when people bring their worries to the first reading as opposed to the second reading. So I have flagged a particular sentence of if we can just open this can of worms. In policy A-B, the people in their school district, item number 3 that says act as a truly representative body for members of the community in matters involving public education. The school committee recognizes the ultimate responsibility for public education rests with the state, but individual school committees have been assigned specific authority through state law. All right, I'm good with all of that. This last sentence, it gives me pause. The school committee will not relinquish any of this authority since it believes that decision-making control over the children's learning should be in the hands of local citizens as much as possible. I think that wording is supposed to mean we are the local citizens, right? But it makes it sound, when I read that, it makes it sound like even though we're saying we're not going to relinquish any of our control, in fact, we're saying that control should be with individual citizens, local citizens, and that's certainly not what we're intending, right? So I don't have new words. It just didn't read, that last sentence of that policy didn't read well to me, and so I wonder if
you want to bring something to April 10th, I'm sure the committee would be interested.
Well, I kind of wanted to just put it in people's brains to say, do
Maybe
you
each of
also
us-
read it as poorly? And if so, maybe somebody else could help me suggest some different words there.
Mayor Cahill.
This is just off the cuff here. We could strike the last sentence entirely, or strike the last sentence after the word authority.
Right, the sense clause.
Yeah, perhaps strike all that.
We shall have a think on that, and at our second reading, we'll make edit. Have a think. Yes.
Oh, the thinks you can think.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. I think that was about it. I did find it interesting that our policy has the historical note on AA, and so it got me looking into my history of Beverly that we found at a used bookshop in Gloucester, and it was just really interesting to see that the historical report from Beverly is the history of education in this town. Could it be written in detail would be exceedingly interesting and instructive, illustrating the importance it has ever held in its estimation of its citizens and showing the various progress it has made here in common with its sister towns. There's actually a whole chapter about how the schools first were built as part of their meeting hall and then eventually outgrew that. They had to build a schoolhouse adjoining, and very fascinating reading if anyone wants to see how our earliest school committees had to build our schools. Yes.
While we're on this topic of the history of our Beverly schools, I think it's a fantastic segue to say that in 2 years from now, we will hit the 400th birthday of the quote-unquote city of Beverly. And there is a committee, actually Councilor Rotundo was here earlier at FNF, and he is spearheading a group of volunteers that are planning a very large commemorative year. And there are things that I think we could do in our schools, in the curriculum, to help celebrate that 400-year anniversary, including but not limited to maybe the summer reading books that year have something. You know, I don't know that book would qualify as one of the books that Barb or Alex would normally bring forward, but maybe we have, historical drawing, everybody gets to draw the Hannah ship or something, I don't know. But I think it's never too early to start thinking about that. And so that's on my list of things to do because I've been invited onto that committee. And we had a meeting just last night, so it's in the front of my brain right now. But I also am trying to be respectful of the fact that we're in negotiations and we're in budget season. But given your timeliness of your little comment, I thought I'd just throw that out there. I think it would be really cool if the schools could weave some things into their curriculum 2 years from now, specific to our 400th birthday.
Yeah, that sounds really good.
Okay. So you have AA, AB, and AD. We're going to have a think on some of AB. Also, I think it's important to look at AD, which is our mission statement. This is how it's currently presented. I think that we work really closely with the superintendent on ensuring that our mission statement reflects, what it is we're setting out to do. So just have a closer look at that because we can make a motion to leave everything as is or to make edits at our April 10th meeting. Okay. Yes.
Could I on AB request edits pertaining to the word citizens? I gave it a go myself, and there are places where the word citizen needs to be there because it speaks to people electing school committee members. But I don't think we want to ever exclude non-citizen residents, whether they be parents or students or not, who are residents of the community. So as I said, there are a couple places there where the word citizens is really required because it refers to vote, voting status, but not necessarily everywhere the word is used. I think there may be an ability to mix that up a bit.
We will have a think on that as well. Okay, thank you for pointing that out. Okay, next I just wanted to make some reminders. We have negotiation subcommittee meetings on the 1st, so on Monday and Thursday of next week. Our curriculum instruction student life is at 6:30 on the 10th, and our regular school committee is at 7:30, April 10th, so in a couple weeks' time. We also have our next FNF planned for after the spring break, so that will be 4/24, followed by another negotiation session 4/25. And then that budget hearing that Dr. Churchak mentioned is on May 8th. So hopefully those are all in your calendars. I think in the next couple of meetings, we'll be hearing more specifics about the budget and need to make a recommendation for the budget that gets presented in the budget book to the public in advance of our public hearing. Also, we have a few other dates. 5/9 is another negotiations, as is 5/23. And then thank you for reminding me about Senator Lovely's invitation for the 12th of April. Okay. I think that's all I wanted to cover this evening. I can just add something. It's not for a vote, so I'm just going to add that we have a resident representative who has indicated his interest in joining our finance and facilities, and so I will be making that appointment for the April 24th meeting. Will be your first meeting. So thank you so much for volunteering your time to join us at the table. Appreciate it, Dominic. Okay, and with that, the chair is going to move that we meet in executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, for purposes 7 and 3, and not to return to open session. Purpose 7 is to review and approve the minutes from our executive session meeting of March 13th, 2024. Purpose 3 is to discuss strategy with respect to and in preparation for collective bargaining with our BTA and AFSME units, because an open discussion may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the committee. I have made that motion. Is there a second?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson. I do need to do a roll call. Mayor Cahill?
Yes.
Ms. Coelho?
Yes.
Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza?
Yes.
Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
Dr. Silva is absent. Ms. Visnick?
Yes.
And Ms. Abel, yes. By a vote of 6-0, it is now 9:12. We are leaving our open session. We will enter into executive session once we clear the room. Thank you so much. Thank you, Kim from BevCam. We appreciate it.